Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of the Strong and the Geek podcast, where we talk movies, TV, video games, and comic books.
Other stuff.
And other stuff.
I want to talk about other stuff.
Those are our four main food groups. I, as per always, am your host, Ben Ramirez. With me today is a special guest co-host.
Not Josh Ramirez.
Woohoo! Not Josh Ramirez.
Yeah, we're mixing it up this time around.
I was actually going to save not Josh Ramirez for a week that, for whatever reason, you couldn't be here, and we had like Big Jeff for the tattoos
but then you'd want to say that it was actually them.
I would be like, here we have not Josh Ramirez, aka Big Jeff for the tattoos.
No.
All right, so not Josh.
We have an exciting show for you today, this wonderful Monday morning. We'll be discussing some of the things that happened this week, per usual, and talk about our Geek of the Week, and then our special main topic, as we promised last week, we're going to delve into some of the aftermath of Wonder Woman's coming out, so to speak, and also the ramifications of that in terms of some other media. But first, things first. What'd you do this week? I hate when you say that, by the way.
What did you get into?
What did you get into this week?
All right. Well, several different things.
You watched TV, and you hung out with your kids.
TV, I hang out with my kids.
And you fixed up your house.
And
the room looks really nice,
It
everybody.
does. And my kid's room now has a bunk bed.
Let's talk about that.
No, let's not talk about that. Did you catch the Lewis Black stand-up special?
No, I'm a person.
Lewis Black is awesome.
Yeah, I'm a person. I'm a person who has a life.
Wow. Rude.
No, I didn't see it.
I'm going to tweet at Lewis Black and let him know. No, it was on Comedy Central.
Oh, no.
I'm going to tweet at Lewis Black and let him know that you consider his art form to not be worthy of people.
No, was it like live?
Well, it was
pre-recorded. Was this the debut of it?
Yeah, it was the debut.
Yeah, no, I meant like, I'm sure I'll maybe probably not, but watching like a live comedy special debut on Comedy Central. When was it on, like a Friday evening?
I don't remember what night of the week it was. It might have been Friday. I don't know.
I have stuff to do instead of watch premieres of comedy specials.
Wow, you're making me feel like a load of crap right now.
No, at least you fixed up the kids' room.
Jesus. Well, in any case, it was really good. He still's got it. He's never gonna lose it
until he dies.
It was actually. Well, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, if he dies.
It was actually really funny. He took the stage, just read like one headline from the current elections. I can't even remember what it was, but it was just such a dumb headline that he then said, "Thank you, that's been my time," and like turned to walk off the stage. And then, of course, he launched in his whole hour-long special. It was very influenced by the debates, whatever. But there was one particular thing he said that when he got away from the elections and started talking about mental health that I thought was so funny but really poetic and beautiful in a way. And I know it's your particular line of work, you might appreciate this. He was talking about how when he was younger, and even when he was an adult, a younger adult, we didn't culturally in the United States, we didn't talk about mental health. That was something that you kept secret in your family because people were ashamed of it, quote unquote, and that it's still, there's a lot of stigma around it because people feel embarrassed to come forward and ask for help if they have some kind of issues that they're dealing with. So what he likened it to was the fact that in recent years, in the past couple decades, the gay community has been able to come out of the closet and be accepted into society and helped and whatnot. And now the next community that really needs to come out is the mentally ill. But because they're mentally ill, now I'm quoting here, because they're mentally ill, they can't find the fucking door. So it's up to us to help them find the door. And I was like, oh, God, it's funny, obviously, because he's saying, like, mentally ill people can't find a door. They're locked in a closet.
Right.
Deconstructing humor here. But just the idea that of us helping each other, I don't know, I thought it was beautiful. And he got a huge applause break for that one. So kudos to you, Lewis Black, in being progressive and shit.
Right. I think the only problem with that is the idea that the mental health community is one community. Any kind of mental illness, as people call them, is just an exaggeration of normal human functioning in some way.
Right.
So this is just my aside that the mental, instead of opening the door for them, a better analogy, in my opinion, would be like taking the sheet that's covering the mirror so everybody can see. Oh, wait a second, we're all have stresses and depression.
Fair
and
enough.
These things exist in all of us.
Fair enough. I think just the point was to kind of lose the stigma
I mean, I like
that
the
there's
joke.
something wrong with you. You know what I mean? And that you can come forward and be open about, like, and it's more so now. You know, I'll be talking to somebody and they'll say like, yeah, I suffer from bipolar disorder or whatever.
Right.
That's not something that people would have admitted to just a few years ago.
Actually, you know what's funny about that? I would say that 9 out of 10 people who say that, oh yeah, I'm bipolar, don't know what the fuck it actually means.
No, I mean someone who's like, I had a friend who was like, when they told me that, I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, like I saw a doctor and I take medication.
Yeah, doctors also. This is the not the right format
Right,
for talking about this. I think that doctors overdiagnose bipolar actually, and I'm talking about medical doctors, not like psychiatrists.
Right.
But anyway, all that being said, cool.
Right.
Cool.
That was one thing that stuck out to me.
Cool.
I also heard the funny story, which apparently you just told me apparently didn't happen a couple weeks ago. We missed it for Geek of the Week. But the gentleman at the Ryder Cup, who was not very gentlemanly, and then made a complete fool of the
European team.
The European team at the Ryder Cup.
He was busting their balls.
Well, I guess I read the article, and what he was doing was it was the practice, where they were taking practice shots. It wasn't actually during.
Yeah,
the tournament itself. And he was basically saying like, I would have been doing this so easy because they were having a hard time with this putt, and they got so fed up they were like, fine, come up here, I'll lay $100 down on the green, and you can try this putt yourself. He walks up, he's wearing baggy jeans, he's not dressed for the occasion. He sizes it up, makes a quip or something about how the putter was too short or something, kind of joking around, and then sinks the putt in one shot, and then of course, uproarious applause. He gets his $100, fist thumping in the air. And I saw the video and I thought, what a perfect metaphor for how the United States deals with foreign relations. You know what I mean? We just like shout from the sidelines until there's some kind of conflict. Then we go in, destroy everything, and take their money.
I mean, yes, that's pretty accurate. But the only difference there is that when he sank the putt, the entire European team was like, dude, that was awesome, like, good job for you, man. Whereas, typically, when a white guy comes up, messes things up, and takes all the money, the rest of the world usually isn't a big fan of it.
Right. But anyways, how about you? Did you do anything particularly geeky this week?
Okay, well, here's what I want to talk about. For starters, I would love to discuss, very briefly, the season premiere of The Flash.
Oh yeah, well, I figured we would get to The Flash and Arrow when we were done.
I thought you were just gonna say, oh yeah, I forgot The Flash debuted. I was too busy talking about Louis Black. But just a fun aside, I was in New York City on Friday, and as all of you I'm sure are aware, this weekend was New York Comic Con. Well, let me start by saying, no, unfortunately I didn't get to go to New York Comic Con, because the tickets were sold out.
They were sold out a while back.
Which was kind of frustrating. But also, the line to get in was so unusually long. I mean, city blocks in New York are obviously very large. And it was like the whole way down the block next to the center where the con was held, that I was like, yeah, waiting in that line the entire time to try and scalp a ticket is probably not worth it.
Yeah.
And we weren't staying in New York very long, so I would have had to leave by 4 o'clock or 4:45 or something. So, that's okay. I got the news from IGN, so shout out to IGN.
I just saw a picture online of a friend of ours that happened to be at New York Comic Con, and it was him sitting with Stan Lee.
Yeah.
And
cool.
I was so envious.
Yeah. I wonder if Stan Lee was just doing another cameo, though.
I wonder if it was actually Stan Lee or if it was just a cardboard cutout.
Or a wax statue.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think Stan Lee is what happens when a wax sculpture comes to life, right?
Right, yeah.
By the power of magic.
Yeah. He always talks about, like, he created so many superheroes and everything, he definitely is like a retired
Well,
super.
no. Here's what it is. So, you know how they put the hat on Frosty the Snowman and Around to Life, and he goes, "Happy birthday."
Right.
Well, they do the same thing for Stanley, and he
Excelsior.
says, "Excelsior."
Yeah, but
and then he
it's sunglasses.
and then he's-
when they put the sunglasses on him.
and then he steals some plot lines and characters from Jack Kirby, and then goes back into wax sculpture land.
I'm pretty sure if you were to take sunglasses off of Stanley, like he'd be like he couldn't see like where he's going.
There must have been some magic in those old Ray-Bans they found.
Yeah. Like I have a feeling like he actually legitimately like sees the world like with like normally like two tones like way too bright because he's so used to wearing those glasses all the time.
Oh man.
All right, so Flash season 2.
Let's get into it.
Season 3, sorry. Episode 1, Flashpoint. So I will say, just out of the box, overall, I was happy with this premiere. That being said, I am concerned about what they're doing with Flashpoint.
The direction.
Well, so it seems to me that Barry, well, it seems to everybody who saw the episode, that Barry changed his mind, went back, well, he refixed what he fixed, he undid what he did.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, his mom and dad are dead, but now there's going to be some lingering effects. So, for instance, the big one we saw was Iris and Joe don't speak. I was hoping, I know it would have been a really ballsy move, that Iris was dead. That when Joe was like, we don't talk about her, like, that's not cool, man. That it was Iris was dead.
Well, then the whole season would just be Barry going, it would be like the butterfly effect. You keep going back and trying to figure out what went wrong.
But I thought
he's like, I speed stepped on a beetle.
But I think that'd be kind of cool, like him trying to like figure out what happened, and then ultimately, well, this is for a few episodes or something, and then it ends with the convergence. And
I think clearly they had to make it. Well, I'm going to say it again. They had to make it clear that something is different, so that they can bring in Wally West as Kid Flash in this universe and all that. So
actually,
something had to be.
I don't know if they're going to do that.
Well, that's just what I'm assuming. But
Right.
that if it was the exact same, and then it turns out he gets Flash powers, so like, well, how did that happen?
Right.
So now they can argue that. Although I'll say I didn't like this premiere. I was a little disappointed. I thought the Flashpoint universe would go on at least 2 or 3 episodes.
No, my recollection from a previous episode of The Strong Geek is you thought it would be like the first half of the season.
Well, I thought that would be a ballsy move. I didn't think it would last that long, but I didn't think it would only be 1 episode.
Well, it's not 1. We've seen that there's going to be changes now.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I don't know, from the trailer, the teaser for the season, it just seemed like it lasted longer than, with Thawne being locked in the box, that seemed like an ongoing plot line, and It wasn't. The other thing that bothered me was the stakes didn't seem that high. Because if you think about it, at that point, Barry's like, oh, in this universe that I'm living in now, I lost Iris, right? Wally. Sorry, Wally was the one that got killed. I got confused for a second there.
Right.
Wally gets killed by...
the Rival.
The Rival, that's what his name is.
That was my weakest part of that episode, the
Rival. So Wally West gets killed by the Rival. So he's like, well, I can't let Wally die. I need to go back and let my mom and my dad die instead. What? Even numerically speaking, you made a bad trade.
No.
Whereas in the original Flashpoint, it was the fate of the entire planet.
Right.
Yeah, he can sacrifice his mom for the entire planet.
Right. Well, I think it's a couple things there. One, Barry doesn't know if this was just one of many things that were going to happen. 2, he was realizing that remember, this Barry grew up his whole life with Joe being his dad and his mom being dead. So yes, he has that connection to his mom and to his dad, to Henry and Nora, but having it be like, oh man, Iris and Joe hate each other, Wally's dead, those people he's really connected to.
Right.
So seeing how it's influenced them, I kind of could understand.
Although I would say, like, he's supposed to be an analytical person. He's a scientist. Arguably, that world, even with Wally being dead and the Rival or whatever, is better because there's no Harrison Wells, there's no Eobard Thawne.
We didn't see Harrison Wells. Harrison Wells probably doing something.
Well, right, but it would have been the Harrison Wells If there was no Flash in that universe,
Oh, you mean no Reverse
then there would have been
Flash.
no Reverse Flash. It would have been the regular Harrison Wells that was a humanitarian and a scientist.
Well, we saw that there was no Reverse Flash. There was the rival.
Yeah, but the rival was kind of a bitch.
Yeah, the rival.
Like Barry punked him out in one episode.
Well, he had to. It was the episode's villain.
Although now we saw him, a clip of him laying in bed, and he hears a voice. Do you remember that?
Was that him?
Yeah.
I thought that was just another person setting up.
No, that was that same guy.
Oh, well, gotcha.
He had that boyish face of an all-American quarterback.
So he just got to go home? I thought they arrested him or something.
No. That was after he fixed Flashpoint and came back.
Oh.
Then the version of that
guy
I can't even remember his name. The version of that character that never got his speed powers was then hearing a voice. So presumably the rival is going to be a villain.
Well, no, the rival's going to become Dr. Alchemy. That's why it was like scratching out alchemy on the thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, that was pretty on the nose. No, it has to be that. It has to be him.
Or maybe it's Dr. Alchemy that's going to...
Well, I missed the rival's name, if it was Dr. Alchemy's real name or not.
I don't know.
But I'm excited to see what happens now that they're back, what changes there are, if Harrison Wells is, like, different, or if Earth 2 is going to be brought in again.
I do think the Iris West now, like, not talking to Joe and not being, like, part of their crew or whatever, is just kind of contrived. It's being like, oh, well, they were finally happy together. We can't have that or there won't be drama. So let's make it that they don't.
But you don't know that. We don't know because you tend to think like, oh, well, that's just the writers doing that. We don't know. The writers in Flash have proven that usually, I would say at least 75% of the time, if they do something, it has a reason. It has a bigger ramification.
Okay, well maybe it's just
from one episode. You can't remember.
I know. Maybe it's just because I really want Barry and Iris to be happy, and I just want them to be happy together.
Yeah.
Now, I will say...
That's fair.
So, for me, I would give the premiere a 6. It was fun, but I thought it could have been a lot better. I feel like the premiere last season was a lot better.
I would have given it probably like a 7, maybe a 7.5.
Okay.
It's just great to have flashback.
Now, as far as the Arrow season premiere is concerned, Arrow is the show that I cared less about, and I actually really liked that season premiere.
Okay, well, let's hear it.
Did you not see Arrow?
I have not watched it yet.
Oh, okay. So, Oliver Queen is the mayor of Star City. He is dealing with mayoral duties as well as being the Green Arrow, and he doesn't have a crew behind him. It's just him and Felicity for the most part.
Olicity.
Because he no longer has Diggle. Thea is no longer running around as Speedy. It's just not happening. So... a new person comes into town, Tobias Church, and he starts messing things up, especially because there's a lot of corrupt police officers, and he is kind of takes over as being their, like, the guy that they pay or are being paid off by.
Okay, so
Green Arrow has to stop him.
Right, so that's going to be the big threat through line here?
I think he might end up being that it's going to be more, like, mob-oriented, at least to begin with, and, like, corrupt police departments and stuff like that, which I'm cool with. I think that sounds great, as opposed to doing some big supernatural thing like they've done the past couple seasons. Although, like I mentioned before when we were talking about the episode of what we want to see, I want to see more of a rogues gallery from that end. Now, I know a lot of his villains kind of tie over into Batman villains, but the one thing they were mentioning about this guy Church is that he came from Bloodhaven, and when I heard Bloodhaven I was like, oh, please let there be a Nightwing in this universe.
That'd be cool.
That would be awesome.
We have Superman now, so
if they brought in Nightwing, that'd be really cool, and Green Arrow and Nightwing would do great together.
Yeah. I would hope the casting would be great. Nightwing is a character I hold with a lot of
absolutely. Dick Grayson is my favorite Robin.
A high level of importance.
And then Damian, for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, Tim Drake, dude.
I really like Damian. But anyway, that's beside the point. Now, the episode ends with Oliver deciding that he needs a crew again, so he's going to start training these... There's a bunch of...
Of course it does.
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of street-level vigilantes that are popping up, but they're untrained. There's, like, one guy they're calling Wild Dog, and where it runs around wearing a hockey mask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dark Knight reference.
There's others. And, of course, Mr. Terrific, he gets jumped. And he gets jumped during the episode.
Okay, so he's training these people, and is that like where it ends?
No. He hasn't met them yet. At the end of the episode, he decides he's going to train them. Mr. Terrific goes to talk to this guy, Wild Dog. He gets mugged. So he comes back and he goes, yeah, I'll help you find these people, but only on the condition that you train me too.
Okay.
Because I don't want this to happen again.
So he's going to become Mr. Terrific.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
And then the last scene you see is that one of the cops that helps Mayor Queen bring down this guy Tobias Church, I mean, he gets away, obviously, gets shot by a new archer who is wearing a black hooded thing with a mask. It's just like Malcolm Merlyn, but presumably somebody different. I assume it's not actually Malcolm Merlyn, because that would just be them rehashing the same shit they've done for 4 seasons.
Yeah, I don't know.
But in any case, it was a good premiere overall, though. I'd give it an 8. I really enjoyed it.
Well, good. There you go.
So there we go. Next week we'll have Supergirl and Legends of Tomorrow.
Flash and Arrow, and they're all in the same.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Finally, and it'll be an exciting, wonderful time for DC shows.
Oh, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is pretty good so far this season.
Yeah.
I like the Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider.
You mean Ghost Driver?
Well,
that's still so stupid.
Well, it's. I actually did some research into it. The current Ghost Rider in the comics is Robbie Reyes, not Johnny Blaze or any of the other ones, and he drives a muscle car. He doesn't. So it's not like they just came up with it for this show.
Well, it's still.
He's a young Hispanic guy that drives cars.
He should be Ghost Driver.
And it's actually a different spirit of vengeance that's in him. I don't know.
Oh.
I haven't read all the Ghost Rider comics.
All right, so moving on. Don't you want to review something?
Yeah, I came across this neat little place a couple weeks ago called Larson Meadworks in Mechanicsburg. It is a meadery. It was started by a guy named Nate, who is a former Paxton Township police officer.
That is M-E-A-D, not meat.
No, yeah, mead, as in honey wine. He was a former police officer for like 10 years, something like that. Nicest guy in the world. You go in there, he's right behind the counter. He decided that his passion was making mead. So you go in, tiny little place, and you go. It's fun. You know, it's nice to sit and talk to someone who loves what they're doing, and he'll let you sample everything in the place. And so I bought a bottle of this new stuff that he's brewed up called pumpkin pie mead.
Wow, that kind of is relevant for the fall season.
Yes, it is. And I figured we'd give it a shot here. It's very pumpkin-y and a lot of cinnamon.
Well, right away, it smells very good. So let's down the hatch, I guess. Ah, okay.
It's stronger than wine.
Not bad. You definitely get the kind of traditional mead flavor right off the bat, but then the pumpkin hits you, and it's good.
Cinnamon and nutmeg and whatnot.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it.
I would not want more than 1/2 of a glass of that.
The best thing to do there is to just get a flight. He gives you basically a pour from everything he
Right,
has.
but I'm talking about you bought a whole bottle.
Well, yeah, it wasn't for me personally. It was for a group of people.
I know, I'm saying, like, this isn't something that, I would want to drink a lot of. Like, one would be enough.
Ah, right.
There are some alcohols that it's like, no, I want 25 of these. Well, sorry. I want 5 of these.
Oh, that was a bit of a drunkian slip.
No, what I'm saying is like, for example, they have the new spiked seltzer waters, and those, like, you drink it and you're like, wow, I could have like 20 of these. It just tastes like water, like soda water. But this is like, no, I'm very aware.
Oh, this is more fancy than spiked seltzer water.
I know, but the fanciest has nothing to do with it. Like,
right.
It's just the flavor is very strong.
Yeah. Obviously, this one is very different than traditional mead because it's got all that other stuff in it. But he has lots and lots of different stuff there. So, to all of our listeners that are looking for a different experience, I suggest checking it out for yourself. I give the establishment on a whole 10 out of 10. It's great. This particular one, I'll give a 7.5.
All right, so moving on, it's about time that we discuss our Geek of the Week. Oh, it is.
Okay then, Geek of the Week!
So last night, as I'm sure all of you listening for the United States, so all of you are aware, we had another exciting addition in the saga that is Clusterfuck 2016.
Road to Demopocalypse.
Yeah. And so it was the second presidential debate, this time a town hall style meeting, which really made the ability for Mr. Trump to walk around. Other than that,
and lurk.
Yeah, he lurked
a lot
more, and that's not for town hall meetings. That's really unusual because typically after you walk and do your thing, you go back and sit.
Yeah.
So, but
he also smacked his lips a lot. It's just uncomfortable.
Well, he sniffles. He has the sniffles. But listen, this wasn't. Our Geek of the Week is neither Donald, nor Hillary, nor Anderson, nor Martha, none of them.
Martha!
Yeah, Martha!
I just wanted one of them to say, why did you say that name?
Martha! And it wasn't even the guys asking, and ladies asking questions in the crowd, or online. None of that. The Geek of the Week this week...
Was you watching it at home.
Was all of you out there. No. Now, the Geek of the Week this week was, at one point during the debate, a small investigative. I drank too much mead. No, an investigative insect showed up to see what Mrs. Secretary Clinton was thinking.
He bugged her microphone.
He was looking for all the buzzwords.
Maybe he worked for BuzzFeed.
He flew on by. No, a fly landed on Hillary's face, very briefly, and she instantly moves her. The natural reaction of any horse that gets landed on, move its head and spot its tail.
Hashtag Hillary isn't a horse. Hashtag not with Josh.
Hashtag horses with her. Hashtag stronger together.
Hashtag yes, all women.
Hey, it's for Hillary. But no, so the fly, we thought that was pretty ballsy of you, Fly.
Yeah, well, I was mentioning the fact that, with Bernie Sanders, he got a cute little Tweety bird that landed on his podium, and he grinned and everyone cheered. She got a fly in the face.
No, Fabio got a goose in the face on a roller coaster.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, that one really hurt him.
It was just drawn in by his beauty.
Right. But just an aside here, really briefly before we move on. Congratulations, Fly. Good for you. I'm going to call you Rick the Fly. Good for you, Rick Fly. But for all of you out there who have been watching these debates and following the coverage of election 2016 and really have lost hope in humanity and think that we're really headed in the wrong direction as a nation, here at The Strong and the Geek, we have something we would like to say to you. You're right. You have complete reason to think, oh shit, this sucks. We here tend to like to review shows and comedies and movies and comic books, and it's pretty interesting when the biggest comedy of all is actually for real.
The best way I saw it described was by John Oliver on last night's episode of his program Last Week Tonight, where he said that if Hillary Clinton is the star of a video game about women achieving, the presidency of this dream, then it would make sense that the final boss would be a giant misogynist gorilla with orange hair.
Yeah. Oh, dear. So, keep on keeping on, America. We'll see what we can do. We'll make America strong and geek again.
Hashtag yes.
Hashtag yes for Hillary. Oh, dear.
Take that, Hollywood.
All right. So our main topic tonight, as we mentioned last week, is addressing changing the fundamentals of fictional characters and the ramifications of that.
Yeah, we're getting into some metaphysical shit.
So as you all are aware, there was a little bit of praise and a little bit of backlash with the announcement that Wonder Woman is not a strictly straight character, that clearly she's a member of the LGBT community in some capacity because she's had relationships with women before. And in Grant Morrison's Earth 1 Wonder Woman, obviously they talk about her actually having like romantic relationships. Other times it's kind of just maybe it was just sexual between the Amazons.
Right.
It's irrelevant. But that brings up this idea, and that's our launching board for our opinions on, well, what is it okay to fundamentally change a character's background? Or is there some times where it's okay, sometimes not? Or should we all go fuck ourselves and stick to the status quo?
Right. Well, there are a lot of different instances where we see this. Now,
Well, I mean, let's start with Wonder Woman.
obviously with Wonder Woman, the idea that she lived on an island for thousands of years,
At least 3,000.
with only women, and came out of it, and what, she was completely celibate the whole time? Like, that's dumb.
Yeah, it's silly.
It's one of those things, if you think about it for a minute, you're like, no. Like, if I was born and raised on just an Isle of Dudes, and I lived there for 3,000 years, yeah, I'd probably have boned a couple dudes. Like...
Yeah, and here's the thing. At the base level, so this is one where actually people are saying, like, oh, it's a fundamental change to the character. But I'm like, no, not really. A couple reasons why. One, if you know anything about the creator of Wonder Woman, he had a wife and another lover, and the wife and lover also were together.
It was like a polyamorous relationship.
Yeah, it was like a three-way thing going on there. So, and he thought that woman's love was the ultimate kind, shown for both men and women. So,
Right.
I mean, definitely that subtext is in there. Two, Wonder Woman is from a culture that comes from ancient Greece, and if you know anything about ancient Greco-Roman culture, they had no problem with same-sex relationships.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. It wasn't even a homosexual, like being homosexual or heterosexual. That didn't even exist. So, yeah, to me, common sense says it's not really changing anything about Diana that this would be something that would have happened.
Yeah, this is just based on, our Western puritanical, thought processes being imposed on something that's supposed to be fun and pure.
But I think that what it is that people think of it as Wonder Woman as being an American icon for women. That's changing it in a way and that kind of is where we go. So for Wonder Woman, I think our thought is, no, that's very obvious that was always the way she was intended to be.
Right.
As we move on, we'll see that some of these people we're about to talk about were not intended to be certain ways, whether that's sexual identity or whatever.
Or there are, in some instances, for instance, one I was going to bring up was that the girl playing Hermione in the stage performance of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child is black.
Right.
And a lot of people were upset at that when the casting came out, because they were like, Hermione's not black.
Right.
Hermione's Emma Watson.
Yes.
And the thing is, in the books, it doesn't ever describe Hermione except to say that she is bookish and that she has frizzy hair.
Right.
Well, black people tend to have frizzier hair, so there's nothing to say that character couldn't be black.
Right.
Now, it describes other characters in detail as to what they look like. Hers, very little details.
Right.
So the truth is, it's not even a fundamental change to the character. It's just reading it and being like, oh, I guess it could go either way on that.
Right. And I think that's one of the times where it comes from, how a character is, if their first portrayal is very iconic, then people don't like to see, in their mind, they think Emma Watson. They don't think, particularly if it's a character that's never been shown actually before.
Right.
So, they think, oh, Hermione has to be white because it's Emma Watson. But you're like you said, that's creating a boundary.
There's
ourselves.
no frame of reference.
Yeah, there's nothing to.
I don't know if there's a picture of her on any of the covers of the books, but I don't think so.
But
They're always almost exclusively of Harry.
Even if so, those pictures would have been drawn after the first movie came out, probably. So already then, people in their mind would have had Hermione as white girl. And I can understand. Okay, typically when people think of an English person, they don't think of someone who is black, but the truth is,
there's a very large black community in England.
I lived in England. There's just like anywhere else. There's lots of different kinds of people. There's Asian people from England, Asian descent.
And if you're trying to think that black people aren't magic, then you obviously haven't watched any movie in the past 30, 40 years.
You know what, though? This is just a little aside, but you only hear people use African American or Asian American. You don't hear like African British or, I mean, when I was there, I didn't hear anybody using that language to describe them.
Well, yeah, because first of all, it doesn't roll off the tongue very well.
Yeah, Black British. It's the
Blackish.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I'm thinking it's the alliteration.
Well, no, I think the shorthand is just black or people of color, but that encompasses multiple nationalities and skin tones.
But if you would say like Hispanic British or something, people say, well, they say Latino Americans, Hispanic Americans.
Are there a lot of Hispanics in Britain? I would presume
probably, dude. I'm just saying, like most countries now have a population of.
Oh no,
lots of people.
I'm sure there are. It's just I've never heard.
They would be mostly from Spain. They wouldn't be like...
Which would not make them Hispanic. That would make them Spanish.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So they would be Spanish Brits.
Yeah, I don't know.
Spanish Brits sounds like a type of dog.
There's people from everywhere, really.
Yeah. You know what? We're all humans. What
Melting
does it matter?
Well,
relatively speaking.
Well, melting pot.
Relatively
Tossed
human.
salad.
A tossing salad?
Yeah, that's what they call it now. They don't call it the melting pot anymore.
They don't call it a tossed salad.
Yes, they do. They say a tossed salad is better.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That it mixes, that you can still see the differences and you appreciate them, but it's all mixed
Do
together.
they also mention the fact that it's just like we're all two girls in one big cup together?
Yeah, or one dirty Sanchez away
Yeah.
from... Oh, wait.
This world's just a big rusty trombone.
Okay, all right, we're off topic now. But yeah, so I digress. Hermione, I think that's one that goes to people having this image in their mind of what they're supposed to look like, but not having an actual point of reference to judge that against.
Right.
Now, there are times where we do have a point of reference, and that's where I think, depending on the specific character, changing it would change a lot more than just one aspect of the character. Excuse me. So, for example, you can make... Steve Trevor has historically always been a white character.
Mm-hmm.
But in Grant Morrison's Earth 1, Wonder Woman, he made him a black character. And that, to me, doesn't fundamentally change anything about the character
It's
or
negligible.
the story. Yeah. Now, if you look at... Now, I've always heard people say, like, okay, well, what about, like, Bruce Wayne? Like, why couldn't they make Batman, like, cast a black guy to play Batman? I'm like, well, this is the reason why I think to do that, you'd have to change more about Bruce Wayne than just his skin color. You'd have to change his background, because the Waynes developed their fortune and everything historically.
They're
throughout the
old
United
money.
States. Yeah, and this is just because of the unfortunate history of that community in America. That would not have happened.
And Bruce Wayne would have a different cultural perspective.
Right.
Which isn't really... He's actually pretty culture neutral, I would say. You don't often get into stories of him dealing with racial tensions.
Well, yeah, not often.
Not often.
Not as much as like Green Arrow or anyone.
Yeah, but that being said, if he was a black character, if they rewrote Bruce Wayne as being a black character, then without bringing that in, it would seem disingenuous.
Right.
You know what I mean? To be a street level superhero and to not be like,
right,
have something to do with that.
I think that
fact.
And I'm not by any means saying that. Well, no, like black people can't be billionaires or something. Clearly, no. That's obviously nonsensical to say.
Right.
It's more so that family history of the Wayne family would have to be altered.
Well, and the absolute truth of it is, here in the United States, there isn't old black money. You know what I mean? Relatively, people that have become wealthy
Oprah made herself.
In the African American community have done it within the last couple generations.
Right.
Or you know what I mean? Very recently, because they didn't have the opportunity to do it even back as far as, 1950, 1960?
Yeah.
Pre-civil rights movement?
Right.
Before that, there was no opportunity.
Yeah.
There's just opportunity now. So there's no way that there'd be a family that's been around since pre-Civil War era
Right.
and has the kind of fortune that the Waynes do.
Right.
So I totally get what you're saying there. If they cast Denzel as Batman, I would understand why some people would be like, well, that doesn't... You're changing the entire biography of the character.
It's that, and at that point, it's not Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne, I know that people try and boil it down to Bruce Wayne was a guy who his mom and dad were murdered in front of him and he became Batman. But that's not it. He also had the resources and the ability
to do all those things.
And that Gotham City is in his roots because his family basically owns half the city.
Yeah.
So I think the interesting thing is, but if you made Dick Grayson, if you changed his ethnicity, and wouldn't say black, whatever, you changed his ethnicity, okay. He was a family of performers whose parents were murdered. Bruce took him in. If you wanted to make him Ricardo Grayson, make him
or make him Dick Grayson, the kid that was adopted from the Philippines.
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah, that
does not matter at all.
That I'd be okay with,
because it doesn't, culturally speaking, it doesn't pack. or probably could be gypsies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're a traveling circus. It doesn't matter.
I think when it comes to, like, I don't use DC as, like, my launching board, but I think when it comes to Batman, that's one where I would, like, no, I think it would fundamentally change the character. 2, Wonder Woman, for me, if they changed her ethnicity, it doesn't make any sense. Just
because she is Greek.
She's Greek, yeah. You can't.
Although they do draw her very white, and not Mediterranean.
Right, but still, it's like, that wouldn't make any sense.
Right. No, I got what you're saying there. Superman, we've seen other iterations of him.
Right.
We've seen the Aryan Nazi Superman. We've seen the Black Superman.
Right.
We've seen, because of all the different Earths. In fact, there is a doll or an action figure that you can buy, I think, at Target.
Yeah.
Right now, that is one of the alternate Superman. Earths, which is the Black Superman.
Right. But Superman's another one where Clark Kent, I mean, I guess it doesn't change anything about him fundamentally.
Kal-El could have been any color.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That one, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Now, in your perception, if the next movie came out and instead of Henry Cavill, they had, I don't know, let's say...
Chadwick Boseman or something.
Or Ken Jeong. You know what I mean? Like,
or
anyone.
Whoever, yeah.
You would be like, what?
Yeah.
This is weird.
Yeah.
But you'd stop and think about it and be like, well, I guess it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where it's like...
maybe he got picked on more in small town Kansas.
Yeah.
Or Smallville, I mean to say.
I think it doesn't fundamentally change him as a character. It just is one of those where we feel uncomfortable with it because it's our prototype, our image in our head of what Superman is supposed to look like is starkly against that. But the thing is my argument against that would be, okay, but when you see the images of Superman in, like, Red Sun, where his costume is different, that also makes you feel like, well, that's weird.
Yeah.
So, that one, I think Superman is... I understand why people would have issues if they changed him because of the iconicness of the character, but that's one where I don't think it fundamentally changes his background.
Now, if we were changing gears a little bit and looking over at the Marvel Universe, what they've been doing recently has been taking characters that are fundamental, like, pillars of their universe and changing them into not rewriting their history, but making a new character take up the mantle. And the new character that takes up the mantle is of a different background. It's not just another white guy.
Which I think is a clever way of diversifying your universe, while still appealing to those who think of the old images.
The people that argue it are like, what, you're making Captain America black and you're making, Thor a woman or whatever, they get angry about it. But it's like, but it's not the same character.
Yeah, it's not Steve Rogers.
And here's the thing, it's just proving, at least on the Marvel side, you gotta give them credit, the fact that they're saying, it doesn't matter who you are, anyone can rise up and take up the mantle.
Right.
You know what I mean? If given the right training.
Right. And that's one thing that I think, that's kind of the way I like, that's what I like about them doing it. And I think that's the best way to go about it. Because the truth is, take that framework, and then I'll keep using Batman as the example. If they just say, oh, well, Batman could be anybody. No, that's been decided. That not anybody could be that character.
Several people have tried.
Yeah, they've tried, and some can be, but not just any person. So that's where I think it's good to know that other people... So if there was a story of, Batman training... a young South American child and raise them like he raised Dick Grayson, then that person becomes Batman. That's totally fine. That makes complete sense.
Yeah.
But just changing the character to make them different, I don't know. Something about it is just... Why don't they... I think it's a better strategy to go with what Marvel does.
Well, let's see. For instance, right now, Captain America is Sam Wilson.
Yeah.
So, African American. Thor is Jane Foster. So we have a woman who has taken up the mantle of Thor. We have Amadeus Cho, who is the current Hulk, and he's an Asian American.
Miles Morales is Spider-Man, right?
Well, no, those are separate universes.
Oh,
there's
gotcha.
Peter Parker and Miles Morales as two different Spider-Men. But you also have Spider-Gwen, and you have Spider-Woman, and there are lots of them. But yeah, for instance, Miles Morales is another, for instance, that's someone taking up a mantle.
Right.
Because in his universe, Peter Parker had died, and then he took up the mantle of Spider-Man. So there's lots of different examples of this. There's one that's sticking out in my mind right now that I'm totally blanking on. I'm going to remember it as soon as we turn this off. So those are... I remember now. Iron Man is now Riri Williams,
right,
who is a teenage... it will be Riri Williams.
Right.
who's a teenage African American.
Right.
So we have lots of examples of characters that if you have a problem with it, it's your problem.
Right.
Because they've given a fair enough explanation as to why they're not rewriting your childhood.
But those are ones that they're not changing the act. They're not changing Steve Rogers into, and making him gay.
More people were angry at the fact that they turned him into Captain Hydra.
Which actually, that's fair.
Yeah.
Making him Hydra, that's fair.
Which, I mean, the explanation for it is also fair. Using the cosmic cube, they changed history so that he's a member of Hydra.
Right.
And it's looking like he might actually be the ultimate villain of Civil War II. That he's the one actually pulling all the strings, which is going to be interesting. But that being said, so we have different examples of it where it is a complete rewrite or something that's altered. And I don't think it's necessarily a problem in most cases. In fact, I accept the diversity so that not all superheroes or people going to Comic-Cons and they want to dress up in a costume feel like they have to dress up like a white guy.
Right.
If that doesn't fit who they are.
Now, we've been talking about changing the race of a character or the ethnicity of a character. I wanted to talk about two other points about changes that, and one of them I can't avidly think of any examples, but you'll see. But just kind of hear your thoughts and kind of sound off on what you think the fallout or how it is good or bad to change these two aspects of characters. So we'll start with the one that we do have an example, kind of from the beginning, about sexual identity or sexual orientation or whatever. People frame it different ways. So talking about, we used Wonder Woman as an example. I think there are some characters that it is like that's whatever, that if they were to make him a gay or any member of the LGBT community character, it wouldn't matter.
Like Dumbledore, for instance.
Yeah, or Mr. Terrific.
It never came out what he was.
Right.
It was never specified. There's never Dumbledore hooking up. So when someone put out the theory, like, I think Albus Dumbledore might be gay, and then J.K. Rowling was like, yeah, he's totally gay.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, what? And then you reread it and you're like, oh, I guess that sounds kind of gay if you think about it.
And the thing is like, there are characters who, even if they were written originally as straight or whatever, and then you switch them, like, I think it would be like, whatever, no big deal. So for example, if they made, let's say, like, I'll use like the Atom, like Ray Palmer. If they made Ray Palmer into a gay character, I'd be like, okay, that doesn't really change
anything. Or like transgender or whatever.
Or whatever, yeah. I'd be like, that doesn't change anything about... It would, if they now, to be fair, I would say that it would add some. So I think increasingly, if you make a character, either you just change it to gay or lesbian, that wouldn't add that much to in terms of changing the actual stories. I think that if you had a transgender hero, that they would have to at some point. I know, like, just that there would be some, because right now, members of the transgender community still face like a lot of adversity.
Yeah,
I feel like that would fundamentally kind of. The history of that growing up, that character that would affect them in some different way.
Well, and obviously the homosexual community does as well.
Oh, so yeah, I'm not downplaying that at all.
To a lesser degree because it's more widely accepted. I
guess and obviously I'm not a member of that community, so I can't fully empathize in terms of understanding what it's like in a day-to-day life. So I can only imagine what that's like. But from my understanding, if I were to go, just talk to a random person and say, "Hey, I'm gay." And the cool thing is, in 2016, most people in this area would say, like, okay, like, whatever. But if I were to tell them, like, I'm transgendered, they would still be weird about it.
Or, like, you are thinking about transitioning.
Yeah, like, people are still... And I feel like that one still is a 50-50 split.
Well, I think it's because it goes fundamentally against what people... Like, you're born... In fact, our language is one of the weird ones in the fact that everything isn't male or female.
Right.
And I mean, so we as humans are so blocked into this idea that man is one thing, woman is another thing, that the idea of someone kind of changing sides
on a pendulum
or being like fluid.
On a spectrum.
You know what I mean? It's like, that doesn't make sense. It's not a spectrum, it's either or, it's polar.
Right.
And that's,
so,
as we're finding, not necessarily true.
And I think that creates a whole different set of challenges for the character and their character's history and all that sort of thing.
Right. That's fair.
Right. Now, there are some characters who I think, based because on the core level of their relationship, that if you change their relationship, their romantic relationship, if you change that, it would be it would be damaging to their character. So I think of Superman and Lois Lane. Like, that is a key component of who Superman is.
Right.
And part of the thing that makes him a human, as opposed to being just like, the omnipotent God who can do whatever and destroy the universe, what keeps him grounded is Lois. So that's one where I think if they were to change that and make Lois... I guess if you made Superman a woman or made Lois a man, but I think that would be like...
Lewis Lane.
And
the truth is, it wouldn't really matter.
Yeah, that's true. I'm saying, but if you made it, and that's if you like inverted them. But if I don't know, I guess really truly it wouldn't matter. But it's just that idea of like them being
like if the next comic that came out of Rebirth on Superman, Lois said, "Clark, I want to be a man," and like the next line of comics is about how Lois becomes Lewis Lane.
Well, Lewis and Clark is actually more historically.
Right.
Historically
That's right, absolutely.
That's true.
But I don't think anyone. I mean, obviously there'd be people that'd be upset, but less upset because it's Lois and not Superman that's doing it.
Yeah.
Obviously they'd be like, but Superman's not gay.
Right. Actually, I think really what it comes down to is, and what I was thinking was, if you were to break their relationship, so to make Superman with someone else. But I guess if you framed it that way, that you just change it so they can still be together in some way.
Yeah.
That would be okay.
Now, one thing that we haven't touched on yet that I think is an important topic to hit is we've talked a lot about characters that are traditionally white becoming other nationalities. And we haven't talked about how that goes when it goes the other way around, which is a whole box of snakes ready to jump out at you. And the reason for that is because we live in a culture, the Western culture in general, that has been pretty well dominated by Caucasians.
Right.
And when I say dominated, I don't just mean like in charge. I mean like actual domination of something. And because of that, the idea that someone who has all the power then also takes something from someone else is a lot grosser feeling than it is the other way around, where it's someone who doesn't a minority community, someone who doesn't literally have the same kind of power, borrowing from that which has more power.
So basically what he's saying is whitewashing is a real bitch.
So let's a couple examples. For instance, we already talked about the fact that Tilda Swinton is going to be playing the Ancient One in the Doctor Strange movie.
Right.
I had no issue with them making the Ancient One a woman. Doesn't bother me, because who cares? The Ancient One could be a woman, that's fine.
Right,
but there are a lot of Asian actors out there that are looking for work and could have used a big thing like a Marvel movie, Marvel Studios film. Tilda Swinton is doing fine. She could have gotten any role as some kind of cool British lady.
And even that, it's like, we're not, and I don't want that to sound like saying like, oh, well, they could use offer them the role as a favor. Like, no, it's like they would be better. They'd be more appropriate for the role than Tilda Swinton.
Given the area of the world that takes place,
it's like Tibet, right?
It makes more sense.
It makes sense that some British lady would be there.
But even then, like, the fact is, there are a lot of people that could use that kind of exposure, and by going with someone who already has a big name, you're not giving them the chance to do that.
Right, and also it's just
look.
Not,
I know
I'm talking about, and it's also just not in line with how the character's portrayed, which is interesting because right now we're kind of talking the pro and con about that.
I know you want to go with a big name for your star. That's why they went with Benedict Cumberbatch. Even though this is a cultural thing, not as big a deal, but Benedict Cumberbatch, obviously English, and Doctor Strange is an American character. But we see that all the time in movies, where someone from a different nationality plays, so long as it's the same skin tone, it's not normally looked on in a strange way.
Right. And
in fact, we should do an episode on actors that you didn't know were from other countries. Because, like, Hugh Jackman, for the longest time, I had no idea was Australian.
Well, a lot of people don't know Christian Bale's from, like, Wales.
Yeah. A lot of people have no idea because, they nail a good American accent. Yeah. But that being said, the point I was making was that Tilda Swinton could do a lot of... She can basically do whatever she wants. She's a very well-known actress. But in this movie, she's a supporting role.
Right.
So you don't need the big name ticket in a supporting role. You
Right.
could have given that chance to someone who's maybe more of an upcomer.
Yeah, and in superhero movies, I feel like if you bring in other other actors to play other characters, and it's okay. Like people don't like bat an eye if it's like, oh, that's someone I don't really know. But now I do. Like Peter Parker, no one had heard of that kid really. Like,
Oh yeah, no, absolutely not. And that was a chance on their part to go with a relatively unknown,
for a huge
actual
character.
young character for someone who's going to be a pinnacle of
Right.
their whole franchise going forward.
Now, one that I know that we mentioned before we recorded, and I want to mention before we move on, is like Johnny Depp as Tonto in The Lone Ranger. Like that.
Yeah,
That's just like what the hell. Like
that is not good.
Like you could, for one thing, that movie sucks. 2, the acting in that is very poor. But 3, I mean, the Native American communities are really expansive.
Yeah, and the truth is, they deserve the same kind of exposure
Yeah.
as any other community.
Actually,
even more
hold
so.
On, hold on. I mean, maybe it was a favor not actually putting an actual Native American person in a shitty movie. Like that was a favor to their community. But no, come on, man. Like.
Yeah, Johnny Depp is not a member of the Sioux tribe. You know
And I know they wanted to make it like, oh, this is like Pirates of the Caribbean, only in the West. So we're gonna pick Captain Jack Sparrow,
they were
but
trying
making
to
Captain
build
Jack
up,
Raven. But
yeah, they were trying to build up another new franchise, but it failed horribly.
yeah,
And the truth is, they could have gone with someone of the actual Native American community, and then who knows? Maybe it would have gone over
Right.
better because people wouldn't have been comparing it to Pirates of the Caribbean.
Now I think one reason why, like if the flip, changing a historically minority community character into the difference is actually, for one thing, so with Tonto, that wasn't changing that character into a white character. That was picking a white actor to play the character, which
Yeah.
is frustrating.
For the entire film, he's got his face painted. Regardless.
So for the ancient one with Tilda Swinton, that's changing a character that's normally an Asian character into a Caucasian character.
Yeah.
Now, I would say with other aspects why that's weird is because very often minority culture characters, their culture is portrayed as being a part of them, whereas the Caucasian characters, it's not really a part of their who they are.
Right.
So, for example, like Luke Cage. Luke Cage just came out. You watched it. You thought it was great. A lot of that, has that kind of blaxploitation film vibe, the 70s.
Yeah.
And that's a part of that community, and particularly in that time period and everything. So if you were to make Luke Cage a white guy, if you were to like take him and make
it would literally make no sense.
It would make no sense.
Because the whole idea of that character is that he is part of the black community.
Right, exactly. And that's why I think that a lot of these characters, it would be the characters like that, it would be like off limits. It's stupid because that's for like Katana. Katana is a Japanese woman who is involved with a lot of things in Japanese culture, and to her devotion to her husband, that stuff is really kind of what projects her forward. If you were to make her a white girl, it wouldn't make any sense. Like,
yeah, absolutely. It takes away from like that person's story and heritage.
Right. But then there are other characters that are historically from the minority community that if you changed, it would be like, oh, well, okay.
Well, and I think there is a historical aspect to this whole thing as well, in the fact that often in the past, characters of other races and nationalities were played by white actors and done as a caricature to make their entire culture seem silly.
Right.
Like Mickey Rooney, as an Asian character, or God knows blackface was a big deal. You know what I mean? And it was always to demean that culture and to make it seem less than. And so that's why a lot of people, they say like, well, if it was the other way around and we were saying white lives matter, people would be up in an uproar. But why Black lives matter? That type of thing. The fact of the matter is, in the past, the white community hasn't been that great to all the other communities.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they're blameless or faultless, but when you have one group that's in charge, it has all the power, I should say, and it has historically not been great to the other groups, fly in your eye. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. when you own all the seats at the table, and then you offer up one of the seats, and say like, oh well, we offered you a seat. You know, if it was the other way around and we were talking about like these are the white seats, then it would be an issue. It's like, well, no, it's because all the other seats are white seats. You assholes own the table. For a long time, that's the way it was. Now, luckily, we're starting to live in a world where no, the table, all the seats are vacant, and although a lot of them are still taken by one group, we're starting to switch out and swap and have other tables be brought into the dining room.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of thing.
So let's hope that we can see more of this integration. I want to see more movies starring not traditional, white males. I'd like to see more films and more materials, more video games especially.
Yeah.
Because video games are a big one where usually when you think of the main character in a video game, it's a white dude. They make a big deal of it if it's a woman or it's another nationality.
Actually, I would say that in 2016, women main characters are still not.
They're becoming more prevalent because there's so many female game designers.
And I'm saying they're changing it now so that if you're the female main character, you don't have to be necessarily like a sex symbol, which that's good.
Yeah, that is.
But
also
I would
good.
say that since the early 2000s, there's been a good handful of big name women main characters.
Yeah. Like for one of the things I was thinking about, for instance, was one of my favorite games is The Witcher, and I was playing The Witcher and I was like, yeah, this game, there are no black people in it. And the reason is, the idea is that it takes place in a region that's kind of like England and France. You know what I mean? That
and
kind
also,
of area of the world.
Medieval.
During like the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
So realistically, if there was maybe one black guy, he would have been brought there on a ship from somewhere.
Right.
So it makes sense. But I thought about it, I was like, I can't think of a single fantasy game where you play as anything other than a white guy. Unless you make your own character.
Final Fantasy VII, Barrett.
Fair enough.
Final Fantasy 13, the dude with the chocobo in his hair.
I was thinking more of a game that doesn't have an ensemble cast.
Ah, gotcha.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't see a fantasy title or a big, like, soapbox, or sandbox, game that takes place in a fictional Africa. You know what I mean? Or a fictional Central America.
Well, and even if you do go to, like, the fictional, like, Africa, like, the safari region of the world, it's still just more of the same, like, human characters, even if, like, the monsters and animals and flora and fauna change.
And I feel like a lot of times in certain games, what they do, instead of actually introducing, coming up with a different culture, they insert a demi-human type race.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Like, for instance, in Skyrim and the Elder Scrolls games, you have the regular humans, and then you have the elf races as well, and then you have the Khajiit, which are the cat people, and the Argonians, which are like the lizard people. And the Khajiit are very clearly gypsies, because they didn't want to have to come up with a concept of like wandering merchants that people think are thieves and dirty. They aren't often even let inside the cities. They actually set up their little marketplace outside, which I think is cool that they developed that world for the game. But it kind of discredits that, like, we know what you're trying to do, and you're discrediting those people by saying, well, they're not actually human, they're cat people.
Right. I mean, but the counter to that is, maybe in this world, remember, this isn't Earth, in this world, instead of there being lots and lots of different races, there were actually different species of sentient beings, and this is how, and it's almost a comment on how, no, even if we weren't the same species, humans would still do this to other groups. So maybe it's commentary on that. Who knows? The last point before we're done for the day is I was going to say, this one is, I mentioned before, one that I can't readily think of examples of, but a character, if you changed their religiosity, their
religious affiliation,
Yeah, if you changed that, how that would affect a character. And I think that's one that we don't see a whole lot, but might have some big ramifications.
I think that would go over worse than any other one.
Yeah. So, for instance, Clark Kent's always seen as this all-American boy who grew up Protestant in Kansas. If you made him, let's say, for example, like, Muslim, I feel like that would be, like, hell and brimstone.
There would be death threats
on
people.
And that one is one where I'm like, that sucks that that's a thing.
It would probably even still be iffy if it came out that he was Catholic. You know what I mean? Let alone something as far removed as Islam or Buddhism or something.
Right. Now, there's but the thing is, there are some characters where if it came out as them being something, like that would be out of line with the character. So I use Batman again. If Batman came out as any religion, that would be confusing because he's shown time and time again that what he believes in is one empirical data, so what he can see and feel and touch. And then when he encounters these mystical things or whatever, he says like there are some things in this world that I can't understand, but I will devote everything I can to try and figure them out.
I always presumed he was more agnostic atheist. Line of the spectrum.
Yeah, and that's the vibe that is given by far.
Now there are certain ones that again on the complete flip side, if the next Prince of Persia game that came out was about how he finds Christ, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there would be a huge uproar because he's the Prince of fucking Persia.
Right.
Let him be Muslim.
Yeah, like
you know what I mean?
That doesn't make any sense.
Don't whitewash it. No Jake Gyllenhaals.
Right. And I just think that there are some characters that because obviously your morality and sometimes a lot of your customs are based on your religious heritage and your religious beliefs. So, if you made, oh man, I just, like what if they made Captain America a Jewish guy? Like, a lot of people would really be unhappy about that. But for me, it's like, no, actually, that'd be even cooler if Captain America was fighting the Nazis in the 40s and he was Jewish. That would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would add like a level of like emotional like depth to it, like that he was doing this also because of his family and stuff.
Yeah, you don't often see. You don't see religion tackled in a lot of things for fear of it, I think, is for fear of pissing people off.
Unless it's a character who's like Constantine, like where that's a part of how his thing.
There are actually very few things that I can think of that show clear distinctions as to, like, this group is this religion and this group is that religion. One, for instance, is the original Assassin's Creed title, which they haven't really touched on that at all since in the entire series. But in the original Assassin's Creed game, you could go to Acre, which was a predominantly Christian settlement in the Middle East during the Crusades, and as you're walking around the town, you would hear criers talking about how we have to defeat the heathens, and we have to crucify them or whatever. And then if you went to Damascus, which was a Muslim settlement, they would be talking about how we have to defeat the infidels. But then when you went to Jerusalem, that was split, depending on what district of the city you were in, you would hear criers talking about the infidels or criers talking about the heathens. That was one of the coolest things I enjoyed about that game, because it showed a clear dichotomy and how this was a religious war. Very few things out there are that show that anymore. And one of the things I really enjoyed about that game was that it didn't make one of them the bad guy. They were both dicks.
Right. And I feel like another component of this is going back to what you were saying about making up their own races, their own species or whatever. They do the same thing with, obviously, and this is totally fine when it's characters from other planets and stuff. Like, yeah, obviously Christianity and Islam and Buddhism and Shintoism and all that wouldn't exist on Krypton. Like, that wouldn't make any sense. But when they have characters like... So when they bring in new religions from, like, different places, okay, I get that makes sense. That's fine. But I think that using that as a technique as opposed to having our own actual religions that exist in the world and having them appear in the stories, sometimes it's like, okay, well, you're able to answer this human question, and this human question through this medium, but that one you're not going to tackle. But that's a fundamental part of a lot of people's identity. So I think that it's kind of careless that we aren't able to sometimes talk about how just even show something along the lines of, like, before going into battle, I don't know, Hawkeye does a little prayer or something, or whatever. Or I feel like that would make it more like, oh, that's realistic.
Yeah. I would like to see a mainline Justice League member or Avenger or whatever that's Muslim, or that is Hindu, or whatever. I know there are members of, there are superheroes out there from all the different nationalities, but it seems like the main crew... You know what I mean? That the ones that get the big movies and whatnot are mainly non-religious, or if they are, it's white, waspy.
Except for Wonder Woman.
Except for Wonder Woman. Yeah, she is a pagan.
Yeah. The thing is that
pagan lesbian whore.
but the thing that I would
Hashtag yes, all women.
Hey for Hillary. I think that if they the cool thing is if they did that, they could really show that as another level of okay, whatever. The Justice League would be like, that's fine. Like,
Yeah.
cool.
If we had a new character introduced in the Justice League, they got the same kind of popularity. I suppose Aquaman is another one that doesn't pray to.
There's Gods of Atlantis.
Yeah, the Gods of Atlantis. Obviously, he's not a Christian.
Right.
But if there was another character that stood right next to Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman and Green Lantern, and he was, Captain Damascus, whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? That people would be like, there would definitely be some pushback, but when the movie came out, people would be like, oh, this is kind of badass, though.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's got awesome powers that have nothing to do with his religion like the others do.
And the thing is that people respond to it. Like, when they see it, they think, oh, this character, I can connect to them more. Like, when Captain America has that little throwaway line, like, there's only one God, and I'm sure he doesn't dress like that.
Yeah.
Like, jumps out. People were like, that's awesome. Captain America I can connect to him, because he really is the human here.
Yeah.
When Nightcrawler, like, looks, his appearance, people see that, oh, he looks like a demon, but then he's, like, really Catholic.
Yeah,
that's really cool. We like that. We appreciate that about him. We need it not as a trope. We need it as just another aspect of these characters that's human.
Exactly. If you were going to have a character, which, again, we'll say Islam, because right now that's a very hot-button issue, and there's a lot of Islamophobia, and I think something like this might help to break down some of those barriers. One of the things that people would have to avoid is that same kind of caricature thing that we have talked about earlier when it was whites playing other races. If it's a character that is a different comes from a different religion, don't make their powers and their name and all that based around their religion.
Yeah.
They're just, like, maybe Fireman or whatever happens to be Muslim.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with the fact that he is a fire-based superhero and is willing to save people. But then when it comes down to those little through lines that aren't the main action in a comic book or in a movie, and they're talking about things, he prays to Mecca. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be a big deal.
And it could be something that one of the characters maybe says to him, like, oh, you're Islamic? And he's like, yeah. Like, cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
Tell me more about your religion. I'm very interested.
On the plane to Moscow while we go to fight the Red Skull.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that kind of wraps it up. We talked about all the major groups and how we just want to see more diversity in the universe, but you also don't need to completely uproot what has been set in order to give us diversity.
Diversity just for the sake of including people, like, just like, oh, we owe them favors.
We need to fit a demographic.
That's where I ask questions.
It seems like it's a marketing ploy.
Yeah, when it's disingenuous. When you're actually just realizing, hey, you know what, there are a lot of people out there that would definitely also be superheroes. It wouldn't just be New York City and the white people in New York. Yeah. It would be other people, too. That just makes common sense.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, there you have it. That's our view on it. Call us liberal F-tards if you want, but that's how we feel.
And you know what? Good for you, liberal F-tards in the comic book industry, and then other forms, movies, whatever, doing that.
Join us next week where we're going to be talking some neat, geeky science. And make sure that you check us out on YouTube and iTunes and SoundCloud. You hit us up on Twitter and on Facebook at Strong and Geek. You can follow me personally at The Ben Ramirez, and you can follow him at Ramrez4Prez.
And you stay strong.
Stay geek.
Dun, dun. Welcome to the post-credits scene, Political Presidential Debate 2016. I am your host, Chris Christopherson. With me is presidential candidate Donald Trump.
Hi, Chris. I love your movies. I can't believe they got you to be the moderator.
Yeah,
Tremendous.
Mr. Trump, your first and only question of the evening. How do you feel about your temperament?
My temperament is huge. I have the hugest temperament, just like my hands. Huge hands, huge temperament. That's what my dad used to say when he only gave me a small loan of $1 million to start the $1 billion industry that I've created, which is tremendous and huge, like my hands and my temperament.
And your rebuttal, Horsery Clinton.